Okay, so you're probably wondering why I'm running late to my own video, right? Well, I'm not. I just wanted to give you a strong image of what it would look like if I boycotted it. Why? Because this episode of Kane Explains is all about the diplomatic boycotts of the 2022 Beijing Olympics. Before we get into the details, I think it's important to understand what a boycott is. Like, what does boycotting something even mean? And where does the word come from? Let's start with the word. The term boycott is actually rooted in an interesting piece of history. In 1880, there was a British man who managed land in Ireland that was rented out to farmers. But the farmers weren't too happy with his management style. Rents were too high and farmers were being forcefully evicted from their properties. In retaliation, the community band together and refused to talk to, work with, or even sell him anything. And it worked. The story was covered by newspapers around the world. Disgraced, he left Ireland and fled to Britain. The farmer's tactic became known as a boycott, or boycotting, named after that infamous land agent, Charles Cunningham Boycott. Who knew? But let's go to an expert in Olympic history and policy, Alan Oldham, for a more relatable example of boycotting.
You have a bunch of friends get together and you want to do something together, but you don't want to go to that one place because the owner of that pizza store doesn't treat their staff right. And you decide as a group, we're not going to go there anymore because we don't like that. That's a boycott.
Okay, nice example, Alan. I mean, I love pizza, but I get it. So what does this have to do with the Olympics? And how is a diplomatic boycott different from a, regular boycott? Turns out there's a pretty lengthy history of boycotts at the Olympics. These particular boycotts are typically done by a country protesting something that the host country or another participating country has done that they don't agree with. I'll give you a couple examples. The first Olympic boycotts took place at the 1956 Summer Olympics in Melbourne, Australia. And there were more than just one. China began a lengthy boycott that ended in 1980 because Taiwan was allowed to compete as a country. Spain, Switzerland, and the Netherlands boycotted the Games in response to the former Soviet Union's invasion of Hungary. And Lebanon, Iraq, and Egypt boycotted the Games in response to the Suez Crisis. These were athletic boycotts, meaning the countries did not participate and stopped any of their athletes from attending. As far as those countries were concerned, the Olympics weren't happening. Think of it like cancel culture. Another big boycott was at the 1980 Summer Olympics in Moscow, where the US disagreed with the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan and led a large boycott. 65 countries, including Canada, did not participate or send their athletes. Many of these countries were in support of the US boycotts, while others did not participate for other reasons. There's a lot more too, including the 1984 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles, where the former Soviet Union led a boycott with 13 other communist nations in response to the 1980 boycotts led by the US. But those are all athletic boycotts. What's happening now against the Beijing Olympics are called diplomatic boycotts. So what does that mean?
No government officials go to attend the Olympics.
That's Yachu Wang. She's a senior researcher at Human Rights Watch. So let me get this straight. Athletes are still going to the Olympics. Countries will be participating in opening and closing ceremonies. Everything will still be broadcasted. Athletes will still be going home with medals. And it's just country officials that won't be going? Let's visualize this. This is a photo from the opening ceremony from the Pyeongchang Olympics in 2018. The crowd is packed, which will be different this year because, COVID-19. Up here in this area is a delegation of government officials. They are attending in support of the Games and enjoying the show. So these people right here won't be there at the 2022 Games. Let's zoom out. Not a huge difference for someone watching the Games as a fan. So if there isn't some big visual absence or protest, what's the point? Before we jump into that, we need to understand what's happening in China. In recent years, criticism has been growing over China's human rights record.
We are extremely concerned by the repeated human rights violations.
Ongoing genocide and crimes against humanity in Xinjiang.
Now, the list is long and complicated, but according to Yachu, there are two main concerns.
in the Xinjiang area, where an estimated 1 million Uyghur and other Turkic Muslims are in the camps.
As a side note, if you've never heard of the Uyghurs in China, they are a minority Muslim population. In recent years, there have been major concerns about human rights abuses committed towards them by the Chinese government.
They are heavily surveilled. Their cultural religious practices are banned.
The other big criticism is how the Chinese government handled the takeover of Hong Kong. See, it used to be a part of the British Empire, but was handed over to the Chinese government in 1997. In recent years, the Chinese government
has dramatically escalated the crackdowns on Hong Kong's freedoms,
which has resulted in massive protests which have made headlines all around the world. According to Yachu, a diplomatic boycott is a way for the government to say,
"We don't approve of many of your actions, including your human rights policies,"
without punishing the athletes. And that's the key difference. Imagine being an athlete at one of those past boycotted Olympics where governments decided no one was going.
It was a heartbreaking experience. They spent so much of their lives training for it, and suddenly for them to be told that what they've dreamed of and put their lives and their money into for years and years is no longer possible.
So how will all of this affect the relationship between Canada and China?
Taking actions to diplomatically boycott the Olympics is going to worsen the relationship. It's still the right thing to do.
And China's response to these boycotts? Check this out. Okay, so will you and your family notice these boycotts when you're watching, say, alpine skiing, for example? No. But the point is, well, to make a point, Canada does not agree with China's human rights abuses, so they're participating in this diplomatic boycott to send them a message. That's it for KN Explains. For CBC Kids News, I'm Isabelle MacNeil. Boycotts can be some pretty complex stuff. To get a better understanding, I spoke to Alan Oldham, a graduate student at the International Center for Olympic Studies, and Yachu Wang, senior China researcher for Human Rights Watch. I also reference information from the following sites: CBC, Global Affairs Canada, and CNN.